Now, getting into the biggest questions ahead of the 2024 NFL Draft. Again, it kicks off in just less than 6 hours now, so there is a whole lot to be excited about. Want to sort of start off here just at the top because we already essentially know that the Chicago Bears are going to draft Caleb Williams. We've known this for some times. Bears general manager Ryan Poles earlier this week in a press conference said that they already know who they're going to take. We just have to wait until draft day to actually find out. It's been a shoo-in for some time now that it's going to be Caleb Williams, but that means that the draft really starts at the second overall pick, and there are definitely a handful of different opinions surrounding this pick. It sounds like the Commanders are locked in on staying at number 2. They have told teams that have reached out about that pick that they aren't looking to move off of it. They traded Sam Howell earlier this offseason. Howell is somebody that could have potentially rolled into next season, but they decided to fully remove him from the picture, get him out of the locker room, and start fresh. They didn't re-sign quarterback Jacoby Brissett either. So fresh start here with a new quarterback, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, really cleaned house. And really, it's looking like it's going to be one of either Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Now, there were some J.J. McCarthy rumors that were circulating at some point there, but it seems like that has died down. And it does seem like the majority of insiders think that it is going to be Jaden Daniels with this second overall pick. Sounds like the intel is that Washington loves him for the position. Now, a lot of analysts are split as well, but it seems like a lot of the people that are really adamant into the draft process here feel like Drake May is also the better prospect, in that if it were a handful of different teams at that second overall pick, that they would maybe lean towards Drake May. But again, it's about what the Commanders like at their position. And I think that Daniels is likely the more pro-ready prospect in terms of being able to start week 1. He's a little bit on the older side. Sort of on that note briefly too, I think that I personally have had a little bit of a difficult time trying to evaluate quarterbacks, specifically the age factor of it, because on one hand, it does seem like having actual experience at the position does help to, grow over your years, and that's why we see players like, you look at Jaden Daniels. You also look at sort of to a lower end because he didn't have quite as good of a season, but Bo Nix as well, two of these older quarterback prospects, and the years are both a good thing and a bad thing, because I do think that Nix specifically gets dinged a lot for the years he played at Auburn, where the tape definitely was not pretty with him, and it wasn't until this season at Oregon in his 5th year that he was actually able to, put up some more significant production, which is, I think that he's being dinged a lot. I also don't feel like he has the upside, at least from the athletic perspective, both arm and legs-wise, as a Jaden Daniels. People are more forgiving of Daniels despite some mediocre tape himself when he was at Arizona State. But anyways, one way or another, I feel like this is going to be a very interesting year, at least for my own personal evaluation of quarterbacks based off of their age, because I don't think that it's the biggest issue in the world. Where you look at the NBA, and if you're older, it means that you don't have as high of a ceiling. Why didn't you come out earlier in your career? It's because there were certain flaws in your game. The same can be said for quarterbacks as well, but because quarterback is such a mental position, it feels like, and one that requires a confidence level above a lot of other physical traits as well, that this is just a draft with Jaden Daniels in particular that I'm definitely fixated on seeing how this all plays out. But that was a whole aside. As far as this specific spot here, Daniels is the more ready quarterback to start week 1 likely, and it seems like the Commanders have a pretty decent infrastructure to be able to actually put some talent around him. They have the receivers already in Terry McLaurin. I like Jahan Dotson as well. They bring in a new center and Biotish, a new running back in Eckler that can go hand in hand sort of with Brian Robinson Jr. in the backfield. And I feel like this makes sense for Washington. Drake May is interesting because a lot of people are saying he would be better off sitting for a season, which is why in these mock drafts, a lot of people have them landing on the Patriots. It sounds like as the day has come along here that is the likely landing spot for him, and they already have Jacoby Brissett on the roster to sort of ease May into the NFL experience while the Patriots still have holes with their receivers and their offensive line. But going to be very interesting. Again, the draft starts at number 2. Let me know who you think the Commanders are going to take there, because of course it has major repercussions from that point. But a little bit more on the quarterback market here. I know that we've spent a lot of time on the quarterbacks on this show, so I don't want to just repeat everything, but specifically, how will the quarterbacks shake out here? Where specifically I'm looking at J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr. because I think that Williams, Daniels, and May, at least in some order, are going to go in the top 3. J.J. McCarthy is interesting because he's one of these prospects that wasn't necessarily at the very top of anyone's boards coming out of the regular season, and now because of some of the way that he has handled the pro days and the interviews, that a lot of people are falling in love with his game. But there is a chance that this could be a little smokescreenish. Now, it does seem legitimate, but there was also a point last year where it seemed like Will Levis was going to be, I wouldn't say a lock necessarily, but if you remember the conversation surrounding that 2023 draft, it seemed like Will Levis was an easy first rounder, and he didn't end up going until the second round. So interesting there. But Michael Penix Jr. is also somebody where we've seen his stock sort of climb up during the offseason here. Mel Kiper Jr. of ESPN just put out a report that there is a growing belief that not only is he going to be a first rounder, but specifically that he won't be drafted past the number 13 overall pick this year in the first round. Number 13 is the Raiders. They do definitely need a quarterback of the future. They just brought in Gardner Minshew, who, like we saw last year, can be a very fine, plug-in player, but especially in that division. Now, again, you can sort of interpret this different ways, but in a division where there already is a Patrick Mahomes and a Justin Herbert, you're going to need answers at the quarterback position. Is waiting for that 5th quarterback in the 13th range? I'm not really sure if that's the way to go. I compare it to the Patriots in 2021, where they sort of just sat around at 15 until the 5th quarterback fell. They end up getting Mac Jones, who definitely did not work out in New England. Now, case to be made, definitely one that I believe that Mac Jones was sort of done wrong by the organization, by the amount of talent that surrounded him there. Raiders are fine. I mean, they have some receiver options. Devontae Adams, Michael Mayer, the tight end that they drafted last year, really started showing some flashes down the stretch of the season. They signed Jacoby Myers to a contract last year. Their offensive line is just all right. They did just lose Josh Jacobs in free agency. So, again, not a perfect situation there. But, again, interesting conversation at that part as well. But, again, talked tons of quarterback talk over the past couple weeks, so I want to move off of that. A different position that we haven't really talked much about at all, because it is not exactly the, prettiest, most impactful one a lot of the times, but I'm very curious to see how our team's going to value Brock Bowers, considering his position being a tight end. I do believe that Bowers is one of the best players in the draft, most talented guys that are going to be selected. But the history of first round tight ends isn't tremendous. Now, I wouldn't say it's a disaster by any means, but I also feel like it is going to be tough for teams, I think, considering, we know how good Bowers is going to be, but the most recent tight end we saw selected in the first round was Kyle Pitts, who was also very highly touted when he was entering the NFL out of Florida. He was taken 4th overall in the 2019 draft, was the highest drafted tight end in NFL history, and I do still think that Kyle Pitts is a good talent. And that being said, his career has been a little bit disappointing to start. Now, if you're a fantasy football player, manager, I should say, you probably think he's a total bust. I'm not willing to go that far because I do think that, yes, he could be better. He was dealing with some injuries early in his career, but it sort of speaks to the positional value of Kyle Pitts being a tight end, and there are just a lot of things that are out of his control considering where he is as a tight end. It's not like he is one of these dynamic perimeter players that can just absolutely burn with speed. And, Pitts, again, I do think that he's very talented and he can still have a good career, but it's hard to necessarily justify that 4th overall pick for him these years removed. Now, we'll see how this, all plays out by the end of his career, but that is maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale when it comes to overvaluing the tight end position. Now, I went back and looked at the first round draft pick tight ends since 2010. You had TJ Hawkinson, who was also in the top 10, number 8 overall in 2019. I would say that was a really good pick for the Lions. You have Noah Fant, Hayden Hurst, O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, who were all drafted on the latter half of the first round. And their picks, kind of hard to necessarily say any of those were really all too successful. Now, Ingram has been better with the Jaguars, and we saw Njoku sort of come out of his shell a little bit this past year, but took a lot of time to really get production out of the position. Eric Ebron was definitely overdrafted, 10th overall in 2014. Tyler Eifert had promise, but injuries definitely sort of took him out of his game when he was drafted by the Bengals 21st in 2013. And then the last one since 2010 is Jermaine Gresham. Again, a very solid talent, but a first-round player. It's just sort of hard to get that level of value out of the tight end position. So I am super curious to see how Bowers plays into this draft. I think that he could probably be drafted, I would say, as high as, it's not going to happen, but if he ended up on the Chargers or Giants, I wouldn't be completely shocked. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think the Chargers are going to go more offensive line. That is, even if they stick with the pick, they're definitely a prime trade down candidate. The Giants are probably going to go with more of a perimeter player. If he goes to the Titans, again, wouldn't be shocked, but, I just think there's a ton of variance with him in this position. Now, the Jets have been a team that have increasingly been mocked to potentially end up rolling with Bowers, which definitely wouldn't be a bad decision in my eyes. I like Bowers a lot. I think he can play. I think that he can be very similar, at least rookie year production-wise, to what we had with Sam Laporta last season. And I think that he can even be better, at least, over the middle and actually running with the ball after the catch. And I love Laporta. He was an electric rookie, so I'm definitely not trying to talk down on him at all, but I'm just saying I think that highly of Brock Bowers. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out for him, because as much as he could go in the top 10, I also wouldn't be shocked if he ends up falling in the latter half of the first round either. But again, I think that more than anything, it's a conversation about tight ends, and I feel like this is a very interesting case study almost to see, we haven't had that first round tight end since Kyle Pitts, and last year. Actually, I said that, but now that I'm thinking about it, we did have Dalton Kincaid, who was a first-round tight end last year as well for the Bills. So, I mean, Kincaid is also a player where I think that he is very good, very talented, is going to have a good career. He didn't necessarily have the biggest rookie season. Now, he also showed some flashes more down the latter half of the season. But, again, just going to be very interesting sort of to see in a type of prospect like Bowers how the NFL still evaluates that tight end position. Feel like it is definitely a conversation that at least I am going to take out of tonight's draft. But we are going to be taking our first break now. When we come back, going to be hitting more on some questions for the 2024 draft. I want to talk about the Rams having their first round pick since 2016, and I also want to dive into the possibility of us seeing some star wide receivers being traded. But stick with us, and we will be right back.